It is Indiana in the morning. It's WCCS 101.1 FM, AM 1160, WCCSradio.com. Bob Pollock is with us. You can give Bob a call, 479-1160 or 349-WCCS, and ask him your questions about yards and gardens and lawns and trees and all of those lovely things. Our visit this morning presented by Marcus & Mack. Voted best law firm and best personal injury lawyer 3 years in a row in the Best of Indiana County contest. Visit them online at marcusandmack.com. We had a conversation started last week, and I can't recall what it was about, but you said that we would continue it this week. So I'm hoping you remember, because I don't.
That's a good one.
We were talking about aerating lawns, dethatching lawns, reseeding lawns, all of those different lawn things that happen in the springtime. And I think we covered it pretty well, but one of the things that we needed to talk about was the fact that early in this spring, when you have certain patches of your lawn that are really going crazy and growing very, very well, and some areas seem like they haven't awakened yet.
Yes.
Is that because of seasonal grass types, or I know it's individual to each lawn, but could it be an indication of a problem elsewhere on that lawn?
Well, how evenly do you want your lawn? So yes, species is most likely why you have certain grasses that'll be up and at 'em and going strong. Mm-hmm. You need to cut them. And there's other stuff that's just, it's green, but it really hasn't put on any new growth yet. And so that can be just the mix of species that you have. And they might be variable enough that you notice that. Mm-hmm. So if you're okay with that, the other stuff's going to catch up, and probably even by now, it's probably started to, the grasses have all started to put on growth, and so they're going to catch up. Mm-hmm. But you might have a couple mowings off the bat to cut those ones that are aggressive and started sooner, and then the others will catch up and fill in as time goes on. But if you're okay with that, it's no big deal, then it's okay. Yeah. But if you want more consistency and evenness, and you want it to be perfect like glass, then you might have to probably tear it up and reseed the whole thing with a species or mix of species that are more consistent with each other. Okay. I guess is the way to put that.
You just said something that was also on my list of questions for you today, and that was the way you phrased it: tear it up and start again. Yeah. Do people actually do that, say to themselves, I just don't like the look of the lawn, I don't like the blend of the grasses, I don't like the weediness here and the bare spots there, I'm going to tear it up. Now, what do you mean by that? Do you mean kill all the grass and then churn it up and replant that way? How do you go? What if somebody wanted to do that, just replace their lawn, how would they go about it?
There are a number of reasons. It might be the mix of species are there, or maybe things have died out and weeds have taken over. Maybe the ground's really gotten rough in spots, or you've had to dig some spots up over time for one reason or another, and it didn't come back as nice, or it sunk in a little bit. Uh-huh. So there's a number of reasons why you might eventually come to the conclusion that, okay, we got to tear this out, start over again. Mm-hmm. And so then you're going to really, one way or another, you got to kill everything off, especially, when we have perennial weeds and things that have really crept in. When you get overrun by violets are notoriously bad. You can even get thistles in there, creeping Charlie. Those things are very persistent.
I have all of those.
Yeah, very persistent. They don't give up. Some of the clovers also. Mm-hmm. Some people will encourage clover in there. They'll have a little mix of clover. Clover also, once it's established, will, because of the way that plant functions, will make nitrogen available, makes its own nitrogen, but make that available to itself, and also other plants that are around there. So some people want clover in there, and it also can attract insects as well because it flowers. But if you don't want that in there, and it can take over, that's another one that's very persistent and tougher to eradicate. But one of the ways that it's easier to do that is if you tear everything up. So we got to really kill everything off to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And we might choose a herbicide to do that, or we might just say, hey, I'm going to plow this, or I'm going to work it under, just churn everything up and get all that debris off of there so that you can get back. And if you need to, re-elevate the surface, smooth it out, slope it a different way. Maybe you have some drainage problems too. Uh-huh. That's another reason that you might want to redo areas, or the whole thing is maybe it's not draining right. It's maybe draining towards the house, or you get some ponding in places. And so we need to re-landscape that to get it to improve it, for the long run. So dig it up. And then, if you haven't soil tested, if we don't know where our pH is and nutrient levels, and turf doesn't need a lot of nutrients, but we need to have it in pH range and some minimal nutrient levels there. So doing the soil test, and then you might be bringing in some topsoil too.
Mm-hmm.
Is possible if you can't grade it and move things around to where you need it, or if you don't have enough natural topsoil there, you might only have 3 or 4 or 5 inches of soil there, which is plenty for turf, until you get down into shale or clay or something else. So, just knowing you might have to do that. And then you can get back to get it all smoothed off and reseed it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really, we're almost out of April, but you still could get that done if you get it done in the next couple of weeks.
Uh-huh.
You could pull that off. Because again, what we're trying to avoid is waiting too long. If we were at the end of May, then okay, we're getting more risky to be reseeding a lawn at that point, because we're moving into
the hot
warmer
months.
weather. Yes, and so if we wait too long to get it established, then we're going to be in trouble. We're going to have to probably water in order to keep that and get it going. And again, most of the grasses that we're planting are cool season grasses. So in the summer months, they're going to slow down anyhow. Mm-hmm. And we're trying to get a crop established here. So,
all right. So
we don't want to. That's a project. If you see you need to do that, you need to be thinking ahead at least 3 to 6 months, really, to do something major like that.
Yeah.
Because you want to time that really in the early spring, or when we move into September, late August moving into September. Mm-hmm. And that fall time frame, late summer, early fall time frame, has shifted a little bit because of the weather patterns. Sometimes it's still pretty darn warm in September, or like last year it was dry. So yes, we could have done all the earthwork and got everything ready, but we may have had to wait a little bit for seeding because it was so dry.
No.
And you may still have, or you could have seeded it, but you might have needed to do some watering even in that time frame to
you risked
to get a good job.
A very muddy winter.
Yeah. Yes.
And early spring. All right. So some lawn questions there. Garden questions next, because it is time when people are really starting to think about their gardens and getting the ground all churned up. We ought to be out of the coldest of the weathers that we've had and past the frost, we hope. Although we're living in western Pennsylvania, so we don't
what
know
did
that
you
for
say?
certain. But people are starting to think about getting those cold weather plants in right away.
Right. Cool season crops.
And so getting that garden worked up, you recommend the soil test, of course. We should have done that weeks ago and had it back now so we know what it needs. When you have to add something, say you're adding lime to your garden, what's the time frame between the time you get that down and the time it becomes effective?
That most effectively, we should have done that last fall. It needs 3 to 6 months, really.
Oh, yeah.
And it needs incorporated into the soil. That is lime's a material that really needs mixed in. Just putting it on the top, well, okay, yeah, it doesn't move a lot with the moisture.
Okay.
So it needs incorporated, mixed into the soil where the root zone of the plants are going to be growing.
Mm-hmm.
So and it's slow. That reaction process takes some months to occur for that lime to affect the pH and change it.
Okay, so that's lime, but there are other things that you might have decided to treat your lawn with, other minerals that you put on.
If we need nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, those are 5 key ones there for vegetable production. There's also some. Most of our soils have enough micronutrients. Most of our soils, because of our mineral soil structure here. Mm-hmm. So we don't have to add those, sometimes never, or some of the liquid fertilizers, some of the fertilizers do have micronutrients in them that can be applied as a supplement. But typically here, other parts of the country, or you might find things, online, reading about fertility where, oh yeah, we need to add this or that. But yes, those more sandy soils, lighter soils like that, where they don't have the capacity to hold those nutrients, or they leach out, or they need to be. It's almost, when you're growing in sand, it's almost like growing in a container. We've got to add the things that we need for that plant to grow because they're just not there. They're not able to be held on those larger particles versus our soils, which typically we have a lot of that stuff there already. But a lot of that, phosphorus, potassium don't move much unless the soil itself gets moved. Heavy rains, and you literally get soil erosion. That's how we move those nutrients off-site. So those can be, if you needed those, you could have applied those in the fall, gotten things up to where they need to be, and you're already ready for spring. Nitrogen's the one that's more tricky because nitrogen changes. You can put it on as a dry granule, but when that gets moisture and breaks down, then it gets into the soil moisture, and it can, if we get enough moisture, it can leach down through the soil profile. If there aren't plants there to use that, it can also volatilize into the air. It can turn to a gas and just volatilize into the air. So that one's a little more tricky.
And drift away on the wind?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Amazingly enough. So that's why a lot of fertilizers that have nitrogen in, we want to get those applied and incorporated into the soil pretty quickly, within 24 hours. That's how we want to do that.
All right.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you about selenium because Dr. Pohl's always running into cows that haven't picked up enough selenium out of the soil, but that's a naturally produced thing, isn't it?
So yes, and boron, sulfur, we used to have ample amounts of that. Some of that was as a result of air pollution.
Yeah.
We had enough of those elements in the air that moved around, and then got redeposited, and so that we were provided those in a sense for free. Mm-hmm. Now as things get, the air gets cleaner, and emissions are a lot less, that might be something that you have to look for in a particular soil is, okay, where are my sulfur levels, my boron levels? And some crops need more of those than others, and so you tailor it to the crop you're growing.
Yeah. All right. Yep. So there you go. It's time to get to work.
It is.
It's outdoors season. Thank you, Bob.
You're welcome.
It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM, AM 1160, WCCSradio.com. We're a minute and a half away from 8 o'clock.